Hi team, how you doing? Welcome to week 5. I'll make this really quick, but I just wanted to mention a couple of things. First, let's go over last week's quiz, as promised. Okay, we had when a rubric has not been embedded into a blackboard, which the following should an instructor do? And the choices were attach a completed rubric or some sort of facsimile of the final completed rubric, so that the students can identify their feedback area, and open a design ticket by going to Technology tab at COSI. And those are both true. So that's what you should do if you have ever are confronted with a situation where you don't have your rubric embedded. True or false, faculty is required to use the feedback learner quick comment area to provide either a summary or statement, such as please see rubric for attached details feedback. And that's true. And the reason behind that, guys, and a couple of instructors asked me about that this week. The reason behind that is because if students don't always just automatically click the rubric open, they don't. And sometimes if that's the case and there's nothing there indicating that there's information in that rubric, it may just further facilitate that phenomenon that they don't open the links to read the individual comments. So it's really a good idea to let them know that comments are in there, or provide your feedback right within that feedback to learner area. True or false, faculty is not required to include student ID when copying student advisors on student outreach. And of course that's false. Of course we have to provide that. How long does faculty have to grade and provide feedback on assignments? 7 days, right? 7 days from the close of the week. However, best practice is, of course, to get your grading done much, much earlier, specifically on milestones and assignments that scaffold off each other, so that students can have immediate feedback to apply that feedback to the work following that week's work, the next week's work. Okay, hope that makes sense. How long does faculty have to respond to students' inquiries? That's 24 hours. Okay, so now off to week 5. And here we are in week 5. Right here we have our week 5 quiz. And I also this week I want to point your attention to something here. I have also received a couple of emails this week regarding instructors asking about how to exceed expectations and what is the exact definition of exceeding expectations. And I think it's really important for everyone to know that you're not required to exceed expectations. Meeting expectations means you are perfectly performing the expectations of your job. So that's really an important distinction to make. You do not have to exceed expectations. I think eventually everybody gets to a point where they want to exceed expectations. However, it is not a requirement. That said, there were still some faculty that were interested in knowing how to exceed expectations, and how do we read the faculty fundamental requirements, and how do we read the IPR to decipher what we need to do to exceed expectations. So what I've done here is I've just kind of broken it down here, and this would be personal for announcements, as we're going into announcements again this week. So just go through these. It's pretty important on how do you exceed expectations. And again, right up above here, I just made this really super important note that you are by no means expected to exceed expectations. Meeting expectations is perfectly fine. Making personal connections, and I give some examples. Making personal expectations in your announcements, making personal connections in your announcements. You can do this by specifically referring to trends or otherwise notable things happening in the class. I don't know why class is blue, but I'll change that. Anyway, what's going on? So in your announcements in week 4, you would say in week 3, hey, listen, I've noticed this, this, and this, and this is what we need to do to rectify it. Okay, establish positive learning environment by teaching in your announcements. Remember back in week 1, I described teaching in your announcements as really super important way to take advantage of the fact that your announcements are the first thing that your students are going to see that particular week. So use that opportunity to teach. That will in turn establish a positive learning environment, which will further consider exceeding expectations. Facilitate learning plans by assisting students in finding academic support services. Again, if you have a student that's struggling, if you have students that are struggling specifically in things like MLA or any sort of citation style formatting, point them right to this Shapiro. I mean, send them right over, link them right directly to their university document resources to help them through that. Draw connections between students' work to further develop course concepts. Great example of this is suggesting students use specific examples of excellence by their peers. So in other words, in week 4 in my announcements, I would say, during week 3, we covered the pen tool and several students did outstanding work. I'd like you to visit blah, blah, blah for specific examples. And that would draw specific examples of excellence to your peers, thereby making connections between students. Tailor your announcements to talk about specific career goals, learning styles. You can do this by providing scholarly outside resources to reinforce course concepts, talk about relationships of this week's tasks to the industry, and talk about professional experience. Don't forget, students love professional experience stories. I mean, students will sit around and listen to you all day long talk about studio stories. So that's really an important, really effective way to connect. Provide discipline-specific supplemental resources based on student needs. And again, in your announcements, this would be applicable if you have a group of students or if you're noticing trends from one week. And the announcements in the following week, you can address those trends by outsourcing or pointing out of the class resources to supplemental scholarly resources to clarify any misconceptions that may have been trending that particular week. Okay, so that's what I have for this week, guys. Great job. I think everyone's doing fantastic. I'm just really impressed, again, with the level of expertise that we see in these classrooms every day. I just wish I could have more time to go through your classes because I'm just finding fascinating stuff going on. So awesome job. Hey, everyone, any questions, comments, concerns, or other, please get with me. I'll be available all week long. So again, feel free to holler out if you need anything. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.